See, it's stuff like this that gives me trust issues.
Welcome to the Trust Issues Podcast. We have trust issues with the traditional society-dictated path, with the status quo, with the whole get an education, land a job, and work tirelessly until you're 6 feet under. It's time to upgrade your life with the help of us. I'm Erika.
And I'm Kyle Auckland. We're a husband and wife duo, but we're also entrepreneurs, biohackers, and business builders.
Every week, we're dedicated to having purposeful conversations with each other and leading experts on topics like wellness, relationships, and entrepreneurship.
Subscribe to Trust Issues Podcast if you're looking for bold topics, honest dialogue, and valuable lessons.
Welcome back to another episode of the Trust Issues Podcast. I'm Erika.
And I'm Kyle.
And we are so excited to be tuning in today from our lake house. We're actually spending a month at our family's lake house together, packed it all up, packed our dog, our son, our clothes, our food, our supplements.
Took it all.
And headed to the lake. And it's kind of crazy because the episode that we're going to give to you today, the title is How We Got Out of $100,000 Worth of Debt. And that's our story. At one point when we actually were newly married, we had $100,000 in debt.
Yeah, and I think now it's, if you went to college, if you did some of the things that you were supposed to do, it's very easy to quickly accrue that type of debt.
And some of it was student loans.
Oh, a lot of it was
credit cards.
Student loans, yes, credit cards, car payments.
All the things.
Yes.
Paying for groceries on credit cards, paying for car payments on credit cards. I mean, just chaos, okay? And we have learned a lot of lessons in this journey, and we want to talk to you about it today, but it's pretty cool because I think, the fact that we're here, the fact that we're able to, not that we're taking off, but we're spending a month away. If we were in traditional jobs, we wouldn't be able to do that.
No.
So it's pretty cool. We feel pretty grateful for that.
Yeah.
Because I think it wasn't long ago that we were actually living with my parents. We've actually, in our story, we've lived with both of our parents.
We have.
For a season.
And it was a great time.
It was a good time. Sometimes just having someone make you a meal is really nice. So I don't regret it. And then also there was a time when we were like prepping for our wedding and we couldn't afford our wedding. And
yes.
I even remember one time when we were moving into our first townhouse and we were putting our couch on, we financed our couch. It was probably $1,500.
Yeah.
Raymour and Flanigan, shout out to you because I'm pretty sure collections came after us. No lie. Okay.
We were a mess. We were just trying to get through life, and we didn't do a lot of research. We didn't educate ourselves on how to go about handling credit cards, handling debt, any of that. We just kind of were winging it through it with our finances,
and spending probably a lot more than we needed to be,
of course,
on stupid stuff.
But I will say, even with the couch situation, that was our prize. That was like we went into that store and we're like,
where is that couch today?
We sold it.
We sold it.
Sold it. Yeah.
Wow. Some lucky owner is sitting on that couch right now. Blessings to them. Well, today, I think we're pretty grateful because we can say that we don't have all of that debt that we had. That was really, I think one thing about debt is that it's really suffocating.
Yeah.
It's really suffocating and it's really stressful. I remember so many nights laying in bed, my eyes like wide open. Yeah. And we were just thinking about our finances. How are we going to pay the minimums on these credit cards? How are we going to pay for groceries tomorrow when we have to pay the credit card companies? And not only that, but they're calling us because we're late on a payment.
And even, I know I spoke to many other people I've graduated with college, many friends, and a lot of people were in the same boat with their student loans with I know a lot of people, us included, we would just literally were like, we can't even afford to pay these right now. So we just put them on the back burner.
Forbearance.
Yeah.
Anybody knows about forbearance? We know about forbearance.
Yeah. So it was,
Sally Mae calling them up. Hey, we need forbearance again, another 90 days.
Dude.
We lived that. And
yes.
So to be able to share a story today is pretty cool. And we're really grateful for that because we have lived in that place. And I think there's a lot of people who talk about success and share their journeys, but they maybe haven't been through those things. So we're telling you we've been there. So if you feel like your finances are a mess, we know, we get it. We've lived that. We were a hot mess too. And we want to give you some tips today that helped us. Now, obviously, we're going to say none of this is financial advice.
Yes.
We're not licensed professionals. So, get your advisement from a professional. We're just sharing our story. We're sharing what worked for us. and what helped us really get out of so much monetary stress that we had in our life. So I think without further ado, let's dive into it. Let's talk about what we did and how we started addressing our debt. I want to just dive into the first thing. I think the first thing was having a conversation around, what do we owe? I'll never forget, there was one time when you and I felt so out of touch.
Yeah.
We would ignore the conversation because it was stressful.
Yeah, it would usually those conversations would cause fights, right?
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like we'd get into a fight, it would just get ugly. Anytime it turned toxic. But I do remember we sat down and we
had to face the facts.
Well, we literally set up rules for the conversation. We're like, look, this is a difficult conversation. This is where we're at, and it's time to just
not take anything personal.
Yeah, and we just have to set the steps to be on the same page to tackle this thing together.
Yeah, and so that's the first thing we did is we essentially sat down and we went through all of our accounts and we wrote out, what do we owe for every single account? We had to understand our debt first. We had to understand what it is that we were paying. The car payments, it was the student loan payments plus interest, it was the credit card payments, whatever we had, understanding all of what was on our plate and looking at it on one piece of paper was a little daunting, not gonna lie. I remember the stress of that day. I think my cortisol was like through the roof. But you can't fix what you don't know and what you're not aware of. So I really want to encourage you, if you are a listener and you've been avoiding it, because we used to be professional avoiders.
Yeah.
I will speak for myself. I remember driving past the mailbox and having a pit in my stomach in our really sketchy neighborhood where we had this townhouse, and our neighbor was like a hoarder, and I'm pretty sure he was abusing his wife. There was always shouting coming through the walls. It was really an unfortunate situation. It was very stressful, and I didn't really enjoy living there, but it was what it was. And I would drive in our Jeep Patriot that had a crack in the windshield that was literally, sometimes you'd have to take a little hammer thing to get the starter going.
Yeah, it was the battery. Yeah.
So that's the situation we're in. I remember just avoiding the mailbox because I didn't want to see the stack of bills that were in there.
Because you knew they were in there.
You knew they were in there. And I
like,
can name the banks. I can name them right now. Just keep driving. Look away. Dude. Look to the right, So I want to encourage you to assess, where are you at? If you don't know where you're at, if you don't know what you owe, if you don't know what your interest rates are, if you don't know any of those things, you can't make a plan.
Yeah.
So start there. The second thing is making a plan. How do we make a plan?
Well, I'll come right out and say, I am not the biggest Dave Ramsey fan, but there was a piece of his...
Sorry if you're listening, Dave.
I know. There's a lot of fans out there. It is what it is, So the one thing I did really like about Dave Ramsey, because we were in a position where it was like, we knew we had to create some type of budget. We had to live smaller if we wanted to get out of debt. And that's one thing.
We had to cut costs.
We had to be smart. You have to live thin. And the one thing we did with Dave Ramsey is he has a thing called the snowball effect. So basically what he does is, just like we did, you lay out all of your debt, you lay out all the different things, credit cards, student loans, whatever it is, and you start with the smallest first on what you owe. So if you can, you set every minimum payment for each thing. So your minimum payment for your car, for your credit cards, for student loans, whatever, if you can do that. And basically you start with the first one. Once you get going with the first one, the smallest amount. Let's say you have a credit card limit of, I don't know, $2,000, and that's your smallest thing.
That's the one you pay off first.
Pay that off first. Once that's done, you clear that, you roll it right into the next thing. So let's say it's your car. Literally, you take that payment that you were using for the first credit card, roll that into the car payment, continuing with the other minimum payment. So basically, you're putting more money towards the car. And then literally at the snowball effect. So it just gets, you're paying more money for each little piece of debt. So let's say as you get to your student loan, maybe that's like $30K, right? Each month you're living within your means, you're doing the same exact things, but you're literally tackling the payment with, let's say your minimum payment is $65 a month. Now that's turned into you putting like $600 or $700 a month towards that one thing.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
That's literally the snowball effect of how we knock that out.
Yeah, and I think, I'll be one to say that I'm not a big fan of budgeting.
Sure.
I've always been of a mindset around make more money instead of cutting more costs. But you have to understand that when you are in a place of you've got debt everywhere.
Yeah.
You are strapped. You're accruing so much interest because of all the debt that you have. You have to cut costs. So when it came to us budgeting, what it looked like was, well, we weren't shopping. I remember that there was probably a year of our life where we didn't go out to eat one time.
Yeah.
We didn't.
We really
only
lived
ate
small.
at home.
Yep.
We only ate at home. And for some people, they're not willing to do that. But I'm telling you that if you want to get ahead financially, you have to make some of those sacrifices. And we, even to this day, like we don't really spend a lot of money going out because that's not where we like our money to go. But it's something that was an easy fix, because how many times a week do you go out and you're spending money just like, you know, here or there, or Starbucks or whatever. And, you know, depending on the process that you have around financial literacy, there's lots of different teachers that we've learned from. Ramit is another one as well. We'll link some of these people in the show notes that you can check out their work. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And he talks about not worrying about $5 problems, but more $5,000 problems, which I love his advice on that. But one thing that I know is where we were at, it was pretty dire. So we needed to cut anything that was unnecessary. And one of the things I know costs the most, the costs that are like hidden, is food and clothing. So we were spending money on food. So we cut that down to just what are the bare bones of what we need. And we still ate healthy. I mean, we were still getting grass-fed beef. We were still, you know, making sure we were eating organic, but we weren't getting cereals. We weren't getting additional box stuff that really added up. And then also shopping. We weren't buying clothes. We were wearing the same stuff over and over and over again.
Well, and even going out with friends, we didn't
go out with friends because we didn't want to go out and buy a beer.
Yeah, we were just being honest. We literally, so each month we would basically set our boundaries, where it was like, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we progressed. So here's where we want to get to next. We're going to stay within our means here. And it was basically at the end of each month, we set up our rules or our boundaries. And it was like, we're not going to go outside of them. So it was like, okay, this is where we're at. If we had maybe, I don't know, I'd say like every couple weeks or months, we'd be like, hey, we accomplished this. Like we paid off this thing. Like let's have a small win reward, and we'd go out to eat and do something
and
else.
I think that's important, because it helps you when you're in the grind to be like, oh, like there's a little carrot you throw for yourself, right? You know, like dangle that carrot. But yeah, you've got to be willing to live slim for a while. And it's worth it, because then when you're like, I don't have all that debt, I'm not worried about student loans anymore. I mean, I know that there's some people that are in their 50s, 60s still paying for student loans, and that sucks. I'm not trying to be that person, because there's so much better ways to invest your money. And I think that this is such a key thing, that if you really look at your expenses, you're going to see what is actually where do I not actually need to be spending money. A couple other tips that I wanted to share when it comes to finding ways to save and cut back on unnecessary spending is when it comes to meal planning. The one thing that I will say, and this is really specific, but you have to meal plan. Because if you are meal planning, that means you're saying on Tuesday we're eating spaghetti and meatballs. On Wednesday we're eating taco night. You know, on Thursday we're having meatloaf. I don't know, whatever you're making. You're going to get the ingredients that you need just for those things, instead of how many times at the end of the week you notice you're throwing stuff away. That was money. Every time you throw food away, you're throwing dollars down. Like, would you want to take a $1 bill and throw it in the trash can? You probably wouldn't want to do that, but that's what you're doing. And so meal planning is a really great way for you to avoid unnecessary spending and wasting your money. Another thing too is, I would say, trying to find some type of a side hustle or additional income streams. And that was something that we were not too prideful to do. I was working my own personal business. I was also working as a personal trainer. I was taking on extra classes at the gym where I was coaching. I had 3 income streams at the time. And I remember you were working at Lowe's.
I was personal training, and then I went and got a part-time job at Lowe's, because I was like, all right, I can make this much extra money, and I can put all of that right towards basically the snowball effect. You know?
And it's like, and that's the thing too that would really encourage us would to be, I would say, okay, well, my personal training money is going to go towards this. My business that I am running is going to go towards this. And then Lowe's is going to go towards that. So it's like, okay, Lowe's is going to pay off that credit card. My personal training business is going to pay off that credit card. And it really gave a purpose behind that hustle, because getting out of debt, you got to have some hustle. You got to have some grind. It's going to be scrappy a little bit. You got to strap up, and you got to get scrappy, because you have to maximize the time that you have. And obviously it's not ideal and you're going to be tired. That's one thing I want to say too, is you're going to be tired. You're not going to feel like you have all this, you're bursting with energy and you're not living the good life. You know, you are doing something for a short amount of time to give yourself a better life long term. And that's something that we don't regret. And I love that story that we can say, I remember the days where I would be literally running out the door, getting in my car, hitting traffic, texting my personal training clients, like, I'm on my way, I'm 5 minutes late, you know, because I had so much going on, because I was just trying to make money wherever I could. So some type of a side hustle. What are some side hustles that you could pursue? I personally think stuff that's online, stuff that you can just do from your phone. You're already on your phone. Can you work as a virtual assistant for somebody? Can you do some UGC? Can you do affiliate marketing? Can you get into a social selling business? What is something that you can make the most amount of money with the least amount of time? That's obviously doable. That's not you know, being greedy for the dollar. It's you doing work that is going to be the best use of your time. And give you a return on that investment.
And I think that's even with what you're saying with like online stuff now, that is like such a beautiful piece of where we're at in like technology, how far we advance, because you literally can just open your phone or your computer and there are opportunities everywhere.
We didn't have that.
No.
We didn't have that when we were trying to pay off our debt.
That really blew up in the last 5 years or so. And it's like, you know,
there was no TikTok where you could go blow up.
And even there's so many companies now. I follow people on TikTok and Instagram where it's like, they literally pump out side hustles where it's like, hey, you can go to, you know, Apple's website, go down to remote work, and you can do these things. And it's like, you know, $34 an hour type stuff. And it's, you know, it's amazing.
Lululemon will pay you. I saw this other thing the other day on Instagram where Lululemon will pay you somewhere around $1,000 to $2,000 a month to be a reviewer of their product. You know, there's so many options for side hustles. This is where you have to get resourceful.
Yeah.
And that's how you get out of debt, is you don't sit there, you don't wallow, you don't cry about the debt that you're in, you don't complain about it. You made the choices that you made. We made the choice to go to college and take out student loans.
Yes.
We made the choices to get credit cards. You know, we would bitch and complain a little bit, but then we'd have to check it ourselves and say, okay, but we're in this position because we got ourselves here.
100%.
We've got to get ourselves out. We've got to be resourceful.
Yeah. And that's even in, college and stuff, when I worked window cleaning.
Yeah.
I bought some equipment, and when we were in Charlotte, I went around, I did the Nextdoor app or whatever, and I put my services out there on the Nextdoor, like your neighborhood app, you know, and like I'd go clean a couple houses here and there because people would be like, I want
$100.
Yeah, I want my windows cleaned. I'd throw my stuff in my car and like go down the street and clean someone's windows, and it was
That's so smart.
I was like, just pay me in cash, and it was like, here you go, you know.
What skill sets do you already have that you can offer to somebody? Obviously, that type of labor and work is your time for money.
Exactly.
I think a lot of side hustles are going to be time for money. If you can figure out some way to make more passive income, make passive income.
100%.
But don't be too prideful.
Don't
be too prideful, because you were like, I'll work at Lowe's. I'll go clean somebody's windows. We got to put food on the table. We got to pay off this debt.
And that's something that I am so grateful for, that period, because it taught me to be so humble, because you have no idea where people are in their life and their positions, where it's like, I know one of the most uncomfortable things is like when you're talking to new people or whatever you're doing, and the only question they ask is, what do you do for work? Like that, you know what I mean? And it's like, no one's going to be like, oh, I do like 5 different side hustles because I'm trying to get out of debt. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of a almost uncomfortable conversation for people to like, you know, open up like that. So I don't know, that basically taught me to like, be humble, be kind. You never know what people are going through. Like, just like what we were going through. It's like, and you look back, that was just, I don't know, 5-6 years ago that we were kind of grinding it out like that, trying to figure it out.
6-7 years ago.
And in the grand scheme of things, it's like 3 to 5, 6 years.
It's not that much.
No, it's not.
It's not that much time. And that's the thing, is some people will live in a way that they're too prideful.
Exactly.
To make some of these moves that the rest of their life, their whole life, they really never get to experience real life. They never get to really experience the wholeness of life or the freedom that life can give you, because you have an ego. And there's a time period where One of my favorite mentors, Tony Robbins, he talks about the seasons of your life, and he talks about when you're in your 20s, in your 30s, you're in the spring of your life. You know, this is the time to hustle. This is the time to grind. This is the time to put the work in so that later when you're older, you can enjoy the fruits of your labor because you worked when you were supposed to work. Yeah. So I just encourage anyone who's listening, you got to fix your mindset around this. And I actually want to just pause here for a second because I think when we talk about debt, there's a lot of shame that people carry. So good. When it comes to having a lot of debt. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit it. I think in our general society, the idea of debt is a bad thing, which is kind of twisted and backwards because if you go and you want to get approval for a home, you need to show some type of debt, to have credit. Yeah. It's just a wild system that we have, right? But I just want to talk about the mindset around it. Wherever you're at right now, if you are in an insane amount of debt, if you are strapped financially, if you're super, super stressed, you can take your power back by understanding that you chose where you're at. You can choose differently now. Probably out of the circle of friends that you have, I would say 9 out of 10 of them have a lot of debt, that they don't talk about either. So you are not alone. You are amongst good company. We have been there. But you can't carry the shame that you avoid it to the point that you actually never deal with it. Yeah. You have to be willing to look at it for what it is so that you can fix it and you can move on with your life. And that's what we did.
So I'd say even wrapping that up with basically once we got out of debt, we were in this position where it's like, hey, we don't want to go back down that road again of winging it and just trying to, even if you're making better money, whatever you're doing, we did not want to wing it.
A lot of people who make a lot of money don't have a lot of money.
Well, even now, we're literally in this position. I just read that article, it was just a couple weeks ago, where they said this is the first time in history where like people who are making over $100,000 are literally living paycheck to paycheck.
And that's insane.
And they said it's primarily off of consumer debt because they're trying to keep up an image of, what society thinks you should be if you make a certain amount of money.
If you're out there buying Gucci and you've got debt, fix yourself. What is going on?
No, it's so true.
Stop it.
Yeah, so that I would say that would be my biggest piece of advice is once you're getting to the point of closing that gap debt, outsource, find help, search around, talk to your friends, look up a good accountant, look up a good either, wealth management, financial advisor, learn, study, grow, become smarter in this field so you don't go back down that same road.
Yeah, and in terms of how we found who we work with, we have an amazing accountant who has helped us tackle years of taxes that we didn't file correctly or that we needed to file properly or, business entities we needed to create, etc. Things that we didn't go to school for finance. We didn't study this stuff. This was stuff we had to learn later on in our life. And we found who we work with today through referral.
All referrals.
And specifically, I would say too, is if you're, say, for example, we've been primarily 1099 for a while. Yeah. And so we had to find someone who understood 1099 tax law. Was it tax law?
Just tax codes.
Tax codes. See?
Literally.
What do I know?
Well, I have been through the ringer with accountants because literally it's been like...
We've hired the wrong ones.
So we've hired the wrong ones. I've dealt with some accountants where I'm like, okay, let's start prepping whatever we need to do, and he's like, oh, I already filed everything for you, and I'm like, we didn't.
Excuse me?
I'm like, we didn't even go over like the plan of like what needs to be written off or whatever, So you really, I'd say one of the biggest things you can do is ask around if you have any mentors, whoever who is in a good position, just straight up ask them like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is where I'm trying to go. Who do you use? And everyone has been more than open to be like, hey, this is who I use. This is a great person. They can help you.
Yeah. And I would say, listen, outsource where you can. Yeah. But also you need to know some stuff about money. Okay? Because if you don't know anything and you just entrust somebody else with all of your finances, you might find yourself in a tough situation. One of the books that I suggest is Tony Robbins' book, Master the Game. So it's Money Master the Game. It's 7 simple steps to financial freedom. Another one that's really, really great is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I have that one as well. It's on my Kindle. And some of the concepts in there are, at the beginning when I first read it, were really over my head. And I had to go back and I had to read it again. And I've been going through this book, and I will go back to a chapter. But it's important for me, if I want to be financially literate and if I want to be someone who is empowered with her money, I need to know these things. So yes, outsource. Find those people that you can trust, but also don't just blindly trust. Don't just blindly trust. Know your stuff. What books can you read? Can you learn some things, some basic things around money so that you can be able to have a conversation with your accountant, with your financial advisor, and so that you're not just being schooled and you can bring something to the table, because it's your money, it's your finances.
Well, and we are, in today's society, you have to be active in your finances. I think growing up, so many of us were told, and it was just the normal thing to be like, oh, save money, do whatever you make, put it in the bank, You can't do that anymore. You're never going to save your way. What is that quote? You're not going to save your way to
wealth.
To wealth, right?
You don't save your way to wealth.
You don't. And it's like, in this day and age, savings accounts with inflation, the stuff that's going on, you're basically losing money, which is just sitting there in the bank. So you have to be active in your finances. You have to learn. You have to grow. Talk to professionals. Make a plan. It's like the minute we truly got out of our debt, it was like, okay, we got to start figuring out a game plan.
100%.
Yeah.
And a couple other books that I would really recommend to read is, number 1, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This is not necessarily the tactical part of understanding money. This is the mindset part of understanding money. How money flows to you, how money works. Money is currency. Money is energy.
Yes.
And it will change your entire relationship with money. When we were in a place, and just to give you a little scenario, I remember Kyle's going off to work. We shared one car. We were living in that townhouse I mentioned with the hoarder neighbors. We have hardly any furniture. We have an IKEA coffee table with 3 legs.
Incredible.
No kidding.
I miss it.
And I don't know if I miss it. And we had a TV stand that was one of those blue Tupperware containers. Okay, we were living in luxury. And so I remember just feeling super just distraught about where we were in our life and our finances, and just like, this can't be my life. I refuse to let this be my life. And so I started learning about money, because I knew that in order to change my life, I needed to learn how to make money. And Think and Grow Rich was the first book that I picked up. And when I first picked it up, I wasn't really ready for it. I didn't really understand it. The concepts were over my head. Yeah. And I read it again, and I read it again, and I read it again. And again, it's like, if you want to be good at something, you have to study it.
Yeah.
Another book is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles.
It's so good.
And it's such a good read. You could read it in a couple hours. It's probably like a 90-minute book, honestly. It's such a good read, again, about the energetics of money. And we'll, again, link some money books for you in the show notes. But the point that we're trying to make is that if you want to make more money, you need to understand how money works. You need to understand the energetics of it all, and you need to feel comfortable with it. And I think that ultimately is why we ended up where we were at a time, because we weren't really comfortable with it.
Oh.
We didn't know how to make decisions around money. And so we avoided it, and the pile just kept getting bigger and bigger. We tried to sweep it under the rug. And let me tell you, that doesn't work.
No. We were absolutely 100% living in scarcity around money, how we thought about money, how to save money, how to get out of debt, all those things. And we've literally switched our mind into abundance mindset with money. And literally stuff has flown so much easier. Like, more money has come in. It's just, I think the coolest analogy is, especially with money, when you're living like this with your closed fists trying to hold on to what you have, you're going to slowly just basically lose it.
You choke it.
Yes.
You choke the energy of
We've
money.
gone from this to open hands. And this is what we talked about this with Mignon when we interviewed her. You
got to listen to that episode with Mignon. She talks about how she turned $5 into a multi-million-dollar cupcake business. If you think you can't become a millionaire as a cupcake baker, think again. We'll link that episode in the show notes. Go back and listen to it, because it truly brought us to tears. It was so inspiring.
But what she was talking about was, don't be like a pond. If you're a pond, it just gets stagnant, it gets green, algae, gross, and it eventually dries up. Be like a river. You're going to lose money, stuff's going to flow through, but more and more is going to come. Better things are going to come. So
good. Well, on your journey of becoming debt-free, we want to wish you the best of luck. We want to tell you that, yeah, we know it's hard. We know it's hard. We know it sucks. But you know what?
You can do it.
You got this. You're strong. You've got the resources. If you're listening to this episode right now and you're living in 2023 at the time of recording, you have more resources than we even had when we were working through our own debt journey. You have so many reasons to get out of debt.
Yes.
So go and do it. Make the sacrifice. It's worth it. Thank you so much for listening to the Trust Issues podcast. You can become debt-free. You need to just understand your debt, reduce your expenses, increase your income, and keep your eye on the prize. We believe in you. If you love this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes and let us know. Your 5-star reviews help us get our message out to more people who need this message. Leave a review now, and we will see you next time.